Rodman, what I'm learning today is that there is no career or job that prepares somebody to be a good Airbnb host and purchase than an appraiser.
I always tell people when they're looking at buying short-term vacation rentals, I always say you got to think like an appraiser. We deal with methodology, we deal with fundamentals, we deal with returns.
Yeah, and you touched a little bit on government regulations.
Now, there are some places that have outright ban or put moratoriums where they're not taking any more short-term vacation rentals, and that's kind of a city-by-city thing. And that's why I always tell people when you're investing, I'd say it's almost like a highest and best use analysis.
Many homeowners, including myself, are turning their properties into lucrative short-term rentals. Airbnb alone has 5 million hosts serving over 1.5 billion guests. As the demand for short-term rentals skyrocketed in recent years, so did the number of properties entering the market. This surge has led to an oversupply in many areas, increasing competition. But that's not the only hurdle. Local governments are stepping in with regulations aimed at addressing concerns like housing affordability, neighborhood integrity, and safety. How does short-term rentals and the fast-shifting influences of regulation and supply affect property values? How do appraisers approach short-term rentals, and what factors influence their valuations? That is the focus of today's Face Value podcast by the Appraisal Institute, and I'm Warren Boizot.
And I'm Tonya Vailas, and today we're joined by Rodman Schley. He's an investor. He's a valuation expert. He is also the Emmy-nominated TV host and producer and acclaimed author of the books Vacation Property Secrets and The Outlier Mindset. He's also the host of podcast Valuation Property Secrets and The Outlier Mindset. Currently, Rodman heads Blue Fusion Capital, focusing on investing in short-term vacation rentals. Rodman has managed and performed over $20 billion in property valuations. He has served on the Appraisal Institute National Board of Directors, and most importantly, he was our president in 2021 during a very pivotal time for the Appraisal Institute and the appraisal profession in general. Wow, that was a mouthful. Now, welcome, Rodman.
You guys make me sound way cooler than I actually am.
You are so cool.
It's so awesome to be here and to be able to get into this room. And number one, see you too. You know, I miss seeing you guys. And it's been a while since we've been in rooms with our peers. You know, we have an international conference like we usually do. There's been a lot of things that we haven't had. So it's just so cool to be able to come in here and connect just with you guys and to connect with the community again.
So Rodman, what have you been doing since your time as AI president a few years back?
Oh my gosh, it's been like a vacation. I'm telling you. You know, a lot of people don't know the stresses that come with leadership, especially in those executive positions. I really, really enjoyed my 4 years on the executive team and such. But now kind of getting back into life, doing a lot of things that I love, spending a lot more time with my children, who are growing faster than I can even believe. I put a lot of my time into those things and really am enjoying a lot of my journey in life.
Well, on that journey, we heard you invested in some short-term rentals. Do you want to talk to us about that?
Yeah, you know, so I started a private equity company a few years back that focuses on buying short-term vacation rentals. One of my favorite holdings is down in Costa Rica. We bought 6 stores down there. We love it. It's a place called Samra, Costa Rica. The weather's beautiful. The people are incredible. The cash flows are good. And, you know, for us, it was an investment opportunity. When we look at buying, we've got different thresholds that we look at in terms of what kind of returns are we going to be looking for. And Costa Rica really met our border or our baseline thresholds in terms of investment opportunity. Not to mention, it's really easy to get to. I can get into Liberia, Costa Rica. It's about a 5-hour direct flight from Denver. So I can leave at 10 in the morning. I can be there by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I can be shuttled right to the beach. And it's really same time zone actually too, believe it or not. So I don't even have to change time zones. But down there, you know, when we were buying the property that we bought on a 15 cap rate. And to kind of give you an idea of what that compares to in the United States, you know, we're buying usually at a little bit of a lower cap rate, but we all know what cap rates are. It's associated with risk. What's the risk involved? And down there, the rate of return to the risk in Costa Rica was just a much higher rate that we could get here in the United States. So that was one of the first places that we went into.
Rodman, you said 6 doors. Just curious, are those all single-family detached homes, condos? How does that break down?
They're primarily detached, but they are on one parcel of land. So if you can think of it in terms of, you go down there, there's a 3-bedroom house, there's a couple of 2-bedroom houses, and then a couple of 1-bedrooms. So you go there, it's a common pool. People can come in, they can very easily have their private space, but they can also come into the community space and sit there and sip a cocktail in the pool. Not that I do that. Well, no, actually I do. I'll fess up to that right now. But it's really nice because I can have one person. I get some efficiencies because I can have one person manage all 5 of those doors. I've got a cleaning person who cleans all my units. I've got a landscaper who makes sure everything is looking stunning. And I've got a maintenance guy who's there. And so for me, very efficient to have 6 units instead of having 6 units maybe in 6 different cities, to have them all there in one community and then have them on one parcel. I get a lot of efficiencies out of that.
And you're able to manage all this from your home out in Colorado?
Yes. Well, and I've got down there, we've got a manager on site. So who comes in, she's from Wisconsin. The wages are a little bit different down there. I know when I mention what wages are, in say Costa Rica, people go, oh my gosh, that's so cheap, but it's really in line with what the wages are for the country. As a matter of fact, I'm a little bit above market in terms of what we pay. I think our landscapers and our cleaning folks, they're all making about $5 an hour. But in that country, that's above what most people make by a couple bucks actually. So we're actually above market. We try to be above market in those communities because we don't want to just go into a community and take. We want to give, and we want to make sure that we're a good employer down there too. My manager gets a little bit more, but this is a U.S. citizen who's living abroad in Costa Rica who is bilingual. So I have somebody who can speak the language there locally to our staff, but also speak to people who are coming into the country to stay. So it really works out very well for us.
So with a $5 labor cost average, let's say, how much are the rooms going for? And do you also, are you restricted with nightly stays, or do you have to have longer term? Because we know some of the short-term rentals, you can't have just one night each. You have to go to a longer duration, like a week or so. So how does it work down there?
With a property like that, we have a 3-night minimum. So people can come in. And usually if somebody's coming into Costa Rica, especially if you've got a 2-bedroom or a 3-bedroom, they're not staying for a night. There's hotels or whatever that they might get a nightly stay on. But when they're coming to stay at a place like ours, it's a little bit more of more than one night. So 3's our minimum, but most people don't even come for 3. When they're coming in for 5, they're coming in for 7, they're coming in for 10 nights. They want to be able to walk to the beach. They want to be able to walk to the restaurants. You don't even need a car in terms of where we're at. People can come in, they can stay, no car required. They can get to the beach. They can get everywhere just by walking around. And then if they want a day trip, they can just rent out there's so many people who will come and pick you up and they'll transport you to, if you want to go on a volcano tour, or if you want to go see the sloths, or you want to go, whatever it might be. They don't have to go far to see the monkeys, because I'm telling you, the monkeys come right into my property on a day-to-day basis. I've seen people sit by the pool and all of a sudden a piece of fruit will just hit in the ground next to it as a monkey, tossing fruit at them. But that's all part of the experience.
I don't know about you, Warren, but I'm ready to jump on a plane and go over to Costa Rica and stay at Rodman's Airbnb.
Well, it's interesting you say that, Tonia, because Rodman and I had a chance to chat before you hopped on today, and he so kindly offered his property to our staff of 100 here at Face Value for the entire month of December for free. So it's so nice of him. So make your plans now, Tony.
He's lying to you again. He's lying to you. Tell me when you guys want to go, because I want to go with you. We'll go surfing. It'll be great.
Oh, you got to teach me how to surf.
Well, Pato Surf School is perfect. It's $60 for a surf lesson, and then you get to use the board all week for free.
Oh, wow. So you have really good deals down there for your guests.
Yeah, and the good thing is a community like Samara that we're in, it's small enough where we really get to know the local community, so we can support people, we can support businesses. There's a school there that is an elementary school, and these kids are kicking a soccer ball around on this concrete pads and stuff. And I'm still trying to figure out a way to raise enough money to put some grass and some artificial turf in for them, because, nice. It's kind of like so many people want to come in and take from communities. But for us, it's really important that we're going in and we're giving to communities, make sure we're lifting other people up, working with the locals and trying to, instead of take, give back into it.
Now, how did you find that property? Were you there on vacation, or were you looking just for short-term rentals in the area? Did you have you been there before and you said, I really want to own something there? How did you find that?
I'd been down there before, and I fell in love with the country and I fell in love with the people. And, when I was there, I didn't know if anything would make sense financially or not. So I had to do, of course, what we all do as appraisers. We do our due diligence, right? We go in and we looked at 3 different communities. We did full analyses, and this is where a lot of people, when you talk about an investor and somebody who's buying short-term vacation rentals, there's really several tiers. And as appraisers, we're always looking for ways to say, is this a sophisticated investor or somebody who's not so sophisticated? And somebody making a buying decision based on fundamentals and true facts. Have they gone through their cash flows? Have they looked at what the income potential could be? Could they look at the expenses, their occupancy to get to those NOIs? Or are they just saying, I'm going to buy this thing and I hope it pencils out? And unfortunately, back in, say, 2001, what happened, well, let's call it COVID, is there was a real boom in short-term vacation rental market. The whole market just boomed. Because what was happening, while our kids weren't able to go to school, we couldn't go to work. We were all working from home. So people said, listen, I'm going to load up and I'm going to go somewhere for a month. I did it. I loaded my family up. We went to Manhattan Beach, California. We sat there. We worked during the day. My kids went to school during the day. And then at night, we went down to the beach where we could be outside, and kind of away from, everybody. Just because of what was happening at COVID at the time, everybody's, scared to death, and we just weren't getting out. So, you've got that level of sophistication in investors where those people at those times saw all this money. You saw also a huge increase in occupancy rates for short-term vacation rentals, and everybody thought they could do it. So what happened is you had all these people buying short-term vacation rentals, but they didn't know what they were doing. They didn't have that sophistication to understand what's the cash flow, how much am I going to make, what's my return on investment. And so right now what you've got is you've got a lot of people, you might have some saturated markets, but you've got a lot of people who don't know how to be really good at operating. Same thing with appraisers, right? Sometimes when we've got so much appraisal work going, all these people come flooding into the market, but you might have a lot of people who don't quite know what they're doing yet or who are very average at being an appraiser. And then when times get tough, when things get lean, what happens is you get a lot of the appraisers that aren't as good that leave the market. But you've got the ones who are really good at what they're doing, who still keep excelling, who still keep doing well. And so the same thing's happening in short-term vacation rentals right now. You've got a whole bunch of people who are in a market that's went up to COVID, went back down, is leveled back to where it was, but they're going, well, why am I not cash flowing? Well, because they're very average at operating these properties. And if they bought up here and they didn't understand the fundamentals behind buying, and now they're down here, they're tending to sell and they're tending to let go, which quite honestly, it's good for people who are very sophisticated in the market, who understand how to operate within it, who understand how to make sure they're getting the returns they're looking for.
How did you attract investors to your company?
It's primarily just talking to people, letting people know that we're out there, people who are interested in this type of investment structure, seeing, and for me, it's kind of like we do some marketing. So there's be stuff like some Facebook ad campaigns and such, but we're looking for a unique person. We're looking for somebody, there's a lot of different funds out there. There's a lot of things for office or for retail or for apartments. Short-term vacation rental was just a little bit different. So it was somebody who was interested in that kind of asset. The bigger difference in why people invest in a fund like this is because let's say that I buy an apartment complex and, I invest in the apartment and it doesn't perform, right? Mm-hmm. So let's say I buy a $50 million asset and it's not a performing asset. Well, you're going to sit there. It's not like you can say, well, let's sell that $50 million asset and go get another $50 million asset or, whatever it might be. But with vacation rentals, the good thing is you can buy something and then if it's not performing, you can sell it out of the portfolio and try to bring something else in that might perform a little bit better. So you're not dealing with a single egg in a single basket. You're dealing with multiple eggs that if one's not performing, and it breaks, no big deal. You just go and you can bring something else in.
Yeah, I like this idea because Our podcast listeners might know that Warren and I both have second residences that we rent on a short-term basis through like Airbnb or VRBO, but we're the owners, we're the managers, and it just a lot. It's a heavy burden, when you're just a individual owning a property. And you're managing it that way because you have the overhead, you have the mortgage, you have the, like you said, landscaping, the housekeeping, and having this type of investment structure where people buy in is a great way to manage this. It's like an amazing idea that you had.
No, it is a lot of work. And that's another thing. When people came in COVID and bought these vacation homes, they had no idea what they were up for. They had no idea about how much, we were talking earlier before the podcast about things that could go wrong when you're not there. What if you get a water leak? What if your water heater goes out? What if this happens? What if that happens? And then you've got the management on top of that. If you are going to be really good at this, you've got to be uber responsive when it comes to things like Airbnb. Like if somebody sent you a inquiry to stay at your place, if you're not responding within the first 10 minutes, they're probably going to be going somewhere else. And so you've got to be responsive, and then you've got to have a good guest experience. You got to make sure when people come there that you're getting nothing less than 5 stars, because if you do, you're going to lose superhost status, and then you're going to lose revenue, and then you're not going to make as much. There's just a million moving parts, but people think they can just go buy a property and they can throw a sign out and I'm going to take wheelbarrows full of money to the bank. And it just doesn't work like that. But that's why a 15 cap is cool, because you want to make sure that you're going to accommodate what's my brain damage going to be, what's my risk going to be, and you want the returns to you to equal that risk and that brain damage and that amount of effort that you have to put out. And if you're saying, well, I'm just going to pencil this out at a 5 cap and I'm going to take on all this brain damage and risk, you're out of your mind.
Yeah, the 15 cap sounds a lot cooler than the 4 cap that we have out here.
Yeah, if you're buying, and just to give them a little credit on the 4 cap, some people are buying a 4 cap expecting that they're going to get maybe 5 to 10% appreciation year over year, and at the end of the day, they're still going to come out, maybe with, if you look at the overall holding period, maybe 15% annual return. But I don't like that. I'm like, no, I want to get over these thresholds that I have set up for us. And then if we get that appreciation on top of that, that is just all gravy. I always pencil this in at a 3% annual appreciation rate per year, even in the markets that I know that I've done research that have been averaging 10% a year for the last 10. Because number one, you don't know how the market's going to change either. You don't know when that next cycle or that next dip or that next administration is going to come in and it's going to make changes that could have an impact on your returns.
Rodman, when you started talking about cap rates and return on investment, things like that, you're speaking to appraisers, and there's people pulling over in their cars right now because they're so excited to talk numbers. Can you dig a little deeper for us into what you and your partners go into a market and driving down on the numbers of it? How do you decide whether this is a good deal or not? Get a little detailed about it.
That is kind of the thing where, appraisers can nerd out with me. I mean, like literally when we go out and, I'm sure that everybody's on the side of the road right now in their cars writing all this down. Not so much, but when we're doing these things, we're doing an analysis like an appraiser would do an analysis. I mean, that's what I know. That's what we know, right? Not that a lot of people do this that are buying this investment type. These single one-off investors are typically not doing that. But when I'm going into a market, I'm doing a market rent study to find out exactly how much is this going to rent for per night. I'm going to all my resources. Like I use a resource called AirDNA that I can do deep dives and go look. I can find comparables. I can find rental rates. I can find out what's in the neighborhood already renting. I can do a comparative analysis to see what's happening right there. And then I can see another thing. Then I can see also figure out what the occupancy is. What's the average occupancy? And then not just look at last year. Like a lot of people were in 2021 during COVID looking at occupancy going, I'm going to have incredible occupancy. And then they don't think about what happens after COVID when things go back to normal. But we're appraisers. So we do that deeper dive. And then we're also, I always say we're, ultra conservative, which we are. Well, appraisers are a little bit more on the conservative side. I'd rather run my occupancy a little bit lower and my rent's a little bit lower and run my expenses a little bit higher, and then see what happens, and then kind of get down to the bottom. But we do the same thing with the expenses. I'll go in, I'll look at 3 years of historicals, and then ask the questions. Well, why is insurance lower now than it was a year ago? Or why are the utilities trending this way? Or just what we would do as an appraiser to figure out what we think those expenses are going to be in that first year that we own the property. So then we've got our income coming in, we've got our occupancy. A lot of people say, well, hook and vacancy, whatever you want to do, to get to that adjusted amount that's coming in, and then figuring out our operating expenses. The place that people mess up on a lot, though, is they are underestimating a lot of times their repairs and maintenance, and they're also underestimating their management expense, because they're coming in and saying, well, I'm just going to self-manage it. That's like 30% right in my pocket. And then, like you guys are saying, they go, oh my God, I don't want to do all this. I don't have time to do all this, matter of fact. So you got to figure out what I like to run is what you would do typically in appraisal is a third-party management fee, and go, okay, if somebody else was going to do this, what would it cost? And then I run that fee in there to get to my NOI, and then figure out, okay, then I can figure out when I'm buying, what's my cap rate? And my threshold is 11%. I don't want anything under an 11% cap. And that's even in the United States, whether it's Costa Rica, the United States, 11%. And then way I can go, okay, I've got a good cap rate going in. And then when I'm scouring for properties and I've got that threshold that I've got, it makes sure that I'm buying right.
The properties that you invest in, are you looking at things that are currently short-term rentals, or are you looking at properties that you're going to convert into short-term rentals?
It's either one. So for an example, the one that we have in Costa Rica was a short-term vacation rental that had really good P&Ls for 3 years. They had really good historicals for me, right? Very uncommon. Even with these ones that are Airbnbs here in the United States or wherever, even down there, very seldom do they come with really strong sets of P&Ls. And I always tell people who are in the business or trying to get into the business, like, listen, handle this like a business. Have your own separate P&Ls. Have your own separate cash flows so people can come in and they can, when you sell, they can do their own analyses, right? Or when that new appraiser comes in, he can take a look at those P&Ls and have those in his hands to understand what your cash flows and your operating expenses have been. There's a lot more things that go into it with a short-term vacation rental, because the P&L doesn't tell the story all the time. Like, you got to be very careful. If you go into a market, you might have P&Ls, but you might find out that a license is not transferable. Then what do you really have at that point in time? You really kind of have a fee simple value, or I tell people to make sure you go into the cities and see if there's anything in the dockets, on the city council dockets, that they're looking at getting rid of vacation properties, because that's another layer of risk that you're going to take if you go into a market and then 3 months later they're banning short-term vacation rentals. A lot of times you can get you'll more than likely be grandfathered, but you've got to identify all the different levels of risk going into it and then figure out how much that risk is worth to you.
Warren, I don't know about you, but Rodman keeps answering questions that I haven't even asked.
I thought the same exact thing. He went on, and I just kept, check that one off. So that's perfect. But I think, Rodman, what I'm learning today is that there is no career or job that prepares somebody to be a good Airbnb host and purchase than an appraiser. All of this just lends to appraisers. You would make perfect, if you're a good appraiser, I should say, a good purchaser of and finding good short-term rentals.
I would say, and I always tell people when they're looking at buying short-term vacation rentals, I always say you got to think like an appraiser. That's where you've got to start. So, I know that we deal with methodology, we deal with fundamentals, we deal with returns, we deal with the numbers. And so many people, when they're buying vacation homes, do not. When they're going into it, they're operating on emotion, on heart. I love this place up in the mountains. I love this. And some people might have different, not fundamentals, but different goals, where they're sitting there going, for me, it's not about how much revenue. It's like, I just want a little revenue right now to cover the electrical and cover some of this and that, but I want to spend most of my time up there. Well, if you are that type of investor, you don't really need to know those investment fundamentals as much. You're doing it kind of for your personal benefit more than anything. And so for a person like that, fine, don't run the numbers. But if you're really conscious about trying to get not only cash flow, but positive cash flow, that's where you got to think like an appraiser. That's where you got to understand the numbers from the very top line to the very bottom line and know what's going to impact your cash flow. And then you got to know that it's going to be more about that after. Once you've got that cash flow figured out, once you've bought that property, then the real work begins. How do I optimize my investment so that I'm getting the best returns and I've got the least amount of headache and I can give somebody the best guest experience? And unfortunately, that's what I'd say 80% of vacation home owners don't do, or they don't understand. They don't come into it thinking that they're going to have to be an expert or a professional at providing that guest experience.
Yeah, and you touched a little bit on government regulations. Have you seen the government regulations tighten since COVID?
When it was in its infancy, when your short-term vacation rentals were kind of more in the infancy and growing and becoming more and more popular, unfortunately, there was not taxes being paid in. So what you had is these hotel groups, who were getting impacted financially because people were selecting Airbnbs over, say, a hotel, right? But the difference was there was no level playing field. One group, being the hotel industry, was paying taxes and paying, lodging taxes and a lot of whatever state taxes there might be on the lodging, where it wasn't happening over here on these Airbnbs, right? So a lot of the regulation that came in from the lobbyists, especially people, in the hotel lobbyists, they're wanting people to go away from Airbnbs, of course, because they wanted to go back into the hotels. But the big thing is could there be a level playing field? And I think there should be a level playing field between the two. If I'm going to go to a lodging option that's an Airbnb, I should be subjected to the same taxes that, say, a hotel has to pay for lodging that person. And those tax dollars go into things that need to be accommodated and handled. It's like, when you've got somebody in a community with a house, you want those taxes to go in and help uplift the community that house sits in. That's a part of the rental pool. So I think it's good that there's higher regulation. Now, there are some places that have outright banned, or they have stopped, where they've put moratoriums where they're not taking any more short-term vacation rentals. And that's kind of a city-by-city thing. And that's why I always tell people when you're investing, I say it's almost like a highest and best use analysis, right? When you're going into a city, one of the first things that you should do is see if it's legally allowable, right? You should go in and figure out, can I do this or can I not do this? That should be the first question that you ask, because if you can't, wipe the city off the map. I wouldn't look there. The next thing you should make sure you're doing is like I said earlier, making sure there's nothing on these city council dockets where it might be outlawed, but you need to understand what's legally permissible right out of the gates. That should be your first step anytime you go into a community. And then find those communities that are more, I don't want to say, I would say more just kind of open to short-term vacation rentals. They allow them more, and there's nothing on the dockets that's going to stop that into the future. That's what I like about Costa Rica. Number one industry in Costa Rica is tourism. That is their number one industry. They're not going to come in at any time and say, okay, no more short-term vacation. They want people flying into the country with their money and putting it into the economies, going and eating at the restaurants, going to the stores. One of those things where you will see with regulation, it might tighten things up, but it's okay to tighten things up, just like with everything else. You know what I mean? You want an industry, you want a grouping of investors and people, not just like professional investors, but people who own the properties who are really good at what they do. So I almost like a little bit of tightening and a little bit of regulation, because I just want to be in rooms full of people who are the best at what they do.
Yeah, and hopefully that'll get rid of some of the Airbnbs that aren't maintained, or like I mentioned earlier, years and years ago, I stayed in one when they first started where there was Cheetos bag behind the bed and there was some other stuff laying around. And I was just like, this is an Airbnb. Oh, sorry. Yeah. And I was like, I don't want to do this again. So then, I didn't go back, but then I was like, let me try again. There was a cute property, and then it was nice. It was like clean, and, it was something that I wanted to go back. But the first experience I had was really not that great. I want to stay at yours. It sounds amazing. And the one that Warren rents out, did he tell you he has a wall filled with wine and there's a donation box? So you could donate and then you could get a bottle of wine.
So I just put $1 in, I get a bottle of wine?
We have a suggested $20. But hey,
I
whatever you feel comfortable with, Rodman, we've just been ripping the bottles off the shelves of our local liquor store. I think I've sold 3 so far, 3 bottles.
Wow.
So yeah.
That was 3 more than last time I spoke to you.
That's true.
The thing about it is if you're not maintaining a superhost status on Airbnb, your stuff's not even getting shown when people are doing their searches on Airbnb. So, to talk about that guest experience, those things that you talk about with the Cheetos bags or maybe the bad experience, they're really finding ways, Airbnb is, to make sure that people who are not performing on the platform are not getting seen. And I like that too, because it provides more consistency for all the Airbnb owners in terms of what that expectation can be when we're showing up in the algorithm, and especially with a superhost status.
Now, have you ever had guests that were not the best guests, that were doing things intentional so you can give them free night stay or reduce the price in some way?
I have been lucky, and I've heard the nightmare stories from plenty of people, but we've been really lucky down there with our property, and it's maybe because we have on-site management.
So Rodman, we've focused so far on Costa Rica. I'm super interested in your thoughts. Where next? Where are you looking into, and why is number 1 on the list Nebraska?
Did you just say Nebraska?
I did.
Is that what you just said?
Yeah.
Hey, I wouldn't mind Lake McConaughey in Nebraska. I tell you, that would be an all right place to be able to go boating out there. I'm going to keep whatever we do. Number 1, we stayed away from the United States for a little bit because interest rates had gone up to a point where it was reducing the feasibility and the returns on the investment. Interest rates are starting to come back down, so we're starting to peak again at where things are really hot right now. For me personally, we're in Colorado. I love Colorado. It hasn't been feasible for a while, though. You haven't been able to get rents that are going to get us the rate of return that we want. Of course, there are some pretty good appreciation rates in Colorado just because it's a great place to live and a great place to go. So we are still looking at Colorado. We were looking at Maine for a while. It's stunning, and they've got all these incredible lake properties, or you can get on the ocean and be pulling, those lobsters right out of the traps, which is always fun. But for us, we're looking at areas, of course, where people can have good experiences. You've got to be close to experiences. Most people I guess the answer is, right now we're looking at a lot of different places, but we're not sure exactly where we're going to land. It just has to pencil out.
Can I throw one in there real quick, Rodman, for selfish reasons? What about Thailand?
Wow, I hadn't really thought about Thailand. I do know that things are inexpensive over there.
Mm-hmm.
I Googled that the other day. Somebody told me also about Thailand. I said, well, I'm going to go check it out. I just don't know that much about it. But Warren, have you been over?
3 times. Yeah, I love it.
So you love it there. What do you love about it? Do you love the people? Is it the country?
Exactly. When you were describing Costa Rica, I felt like you were talking about Thailand. Love the country, love the people. Genuinely nice. Not just nice, genuinely nice.
Yeah, and I've seen, what I've seen over there, it seems like things are very affordable, but it would be affordable on the rent side too. So you might be able to buy something inexpensive, but your nightly rent's probably going to be low too, right?
You're exactly right. Yeah.
But again, for selfish reasons, you got to think about your goals. If you were saying, Warren, I love going over there, I just love being with the people, I can buy something there, it's very inexpensive, I can still rent it and cover all my costs when I'm not there, or even make some money on it, who cares? I mean, NOI is NOI. Yep. You've got a purchase price, and the reason, if you're purchasing lower but the rents are lower, that makes sense. If you're purchasing higher, you could purchase a $10 million property, and if it's capping out at 15%, that's fine. But if you're buying a lower price and it's capping out at 15%, that's great too.
So, Rodman, I don't think we mentioned the name of your TV show before. Can you put a little plug in?
Yeah, sure. Urban Conversion on PBS. You can watch it on Amazon Prime has it. I don't know if Amazon Prime has season 3, but PBS nationally has all 3 seasons out. We haven't filmed since COVID, but we just signed a new 5-year deal, so they're going to keep airing us for the next 5 years. My kids are small in the first one. I mean, I look at my kids and I go, oh my gosh, and now they're in college. I'm like, holy cow, where did that time go? But yeah, it's still airing. We still love having that show out there. It was one of those things where, it's a real fun journey for us to do, particularly with our kids and with our family.
Yeah, I think we're going to have you back on our podcast to go over what you and Gina had done during urban conversion, because I've seen it. I've watched episodes here and there, especially when I'm traveling and I sit down, put it on when I'm trying to relax, because it's one of those shows that you can enjoy. So I think on that note, Rodman, thank you so much for joining us today. We can't wait to have you back on.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
If anyone has any suggestions for podcast ideas, please email us at facevalue@appraisalinstitute.org.